Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. All right. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships that a woman can have or a young lady can have in her life. And so we started this podcast in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. So thank you guys very much for showing up and tuning in to the Deal to Heal, the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Deal to Heal is the other podcast. This is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you guys listen, like, subscribe, and share to our podcast on all of your social media platforms, as well as check out our new website, our new channel, should I say, our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. And when you guys go there on the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube, you'll be able to find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there, as well as the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast is also there. So make sure you guys go to YouTube and check out the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network there on YouTube in order to check out both of the podcasts that we have available. Also, make sure you guys go and check out, go to ebooksbyejames.com to check out your copy of the Core 4, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father, which is the book that sponsors this podcast, and we are talking about it a little bit more at the end of the podcast. But make sure you guys go there in order to get your copy of the ebook, the Core 4, which is the Core 4 values that every daughter should get from her father. So we're going to jump right in it. Today, just like any other day, we have a guest. We are blessed with a guest. Miss Emma, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. So first of all, let me say thanks for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and I definitely appreciate it. So we're going to jump right in. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
My name is Emma Toops, and I am an entrepreneur in the knowledge industry. My husband David and I have our business, Toops Consulting, And what we do in our work is we're freelance educators, and depending on who we are supporting, we might be classroom teachers, we might be one-on-one coaches, or a consultant. Um, I have a strengths profile accreditation, so I can support people with a strengths assessment, and I can be a private tutor. But my most recent title is that I am a new published author. My
All
book
right.
launched in August. But what we do in our work is we support students and adults who are in academic or career transitions, because transition is a process, and there's always a component of that process that is learning. You have to learn, and maybe change your mind about things that you think you already know, or you just have to learn new things, or that sort of thing. And so that's what we're all about.
All right, all right. And so, to my listeners, as you guys know, we have our partner podcast, which is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I've already invited Emma to come on that podcast, and we're gonna definitely going to dive into everything that she just said. Also, even in the descriptions here, we will put the link for her book so that you guys can go get the book ahead of time before you even go over to the other podcast to listen to that to that interview. So when you guys finish listening to this one, make sure you guys keep your ear out on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast for Emma's interview on that podcast as well. But we're here on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast to talk about the importance of our fathers and our daughters, and how that relationship molds us, or molds our daughters into the women that they are today, and how important the part plays our fathers play in our daughters' lives. And so I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions, Emma, and uh, order to get to know you more, and definitely get to hear more about who your father is to you, and the importance that he played in your life. But we're gonna go back as far as you can remember. What is your earliest memory of your father?
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember a story. There was my mom and dad had some evening event that they went to, and the next door neighbors were going to watch us while they went on this. I don't know if it was a date or if it was like a holiday party or whatever it was. But my brother and my sister are just a year apart from me. I'm in the middle, so my brother's a year older than me. In the middle, my sister's a year younger than me. But we were at the neighbors, and I think I was probably around 4 years old. But basically, as far as the earliest recollection of my dad, to answer your question, there was I remember after the event, mom and dad came back, right, to pick us up. It was late, but I remember him carrying us. We only lived next door, right? But we're little kids, and it's probably whatever time it is, right? They're finished with the event, the dinner, the date, whatever it was. And so it was probably, after midnight or something to that effect. But I remember him carrying me. I remember him carrying me from the next door neighbors back home. And it's something that, as far as what my dad represented, he always represented strength to me. And that, I mean, was just one example when I was just very little. And he was just carrying me. He was just carrying me from the next door neighbor back home.
So, with you being, you mentioned you were the middle child, but
Hmm.
also the older sister. So, being the first daughter, um, and as an adult, I'm sure you could say this now. Was there any favoritism, just like the favorite
We
daughter?
were all in a row. So we were all little, pretty much all at the same time. But my sister and I were really close. Um, she was like my best friend growing up. And part of it was, we looked alike. I was always just a little bit bigger than her because I was a year older. But for convenience, my mom cut our hair the same, and she bought clothes that were the same. There's different sizes. And a lot of people thought we were twins. But as far as favoritism, I think not, because we're all so close in age and all little at the same time. But I think as we got older, I was very vocal, in comparison to my brother, and so that was different because he was the first child and not as vocal, as me. And so I think I represented something that was very odd or different for my parents, at least at first. But we had different personalities, and so I don't know that it was held against me, so to speak, as far as favoritism or anything. But the basis of the comparison, as far as our initial uh, behaviors when I was very little, I cried more. I babbled or talked more or sooner than my brother or whatever. And so, just in that, there might have been a little bit of a uh, difference in how my parents thought of us. But as far as my sister, after me, I think they were pretty practiced after my brother and me. So
Okay. So as a teenager, I know we start to change and we go through different versions of ourselves. How was your dad with dealing with you even as a teenager and going through the transitions of womanhood at that time and also just in your everyday life? Because I know as teenagers we go into dating and things of that nature, or at least
oh
thinking about dating. You know what I'm saying? And it's depending
yeah.
on your father, you might be like, no, you're not dating till you're 30. You know what I mean?
I actually
So
didn't
how was
date
your
when I
dad as
was
a teenager?
yeah, when I was in high school, I didn't date. My sister did a little bit. But part of it, I think, was because I was just so studious. I was kind of nerdy. I We all got good grades, all three of us, and but it was a little bit harder for me than my sister, I think. I tell people that my sister's the smartest of the three of us, and she didn't have to work as hard to get good grades. And so she had a part-time job that she went to after school, after we got our driver's license. But I went home after school and I studied, and the extracurriculars that I was involved in, I was in band and I was in track. But I didn't date when I was in high school. So that was something that was interesting, because it wasn't anything that was really contentious for me and my dad because I wasn't dating. But I could see it with my sister. There would be kind of those conversations of, decisions and where are you, what are you doing, and stuff like this. Um, but I think part of it was not so much not wanting us to do that sort of thing, but just concern, right?
Mhm.
My parents knew we were smart. We were academic, right? As far as good grades, we all three were. And so I think they trusted us in our decisions, but sometimes there would be these conversations or arguments that I would observe of my sister with my parents, either my mom or my dad, and it seemed that my sister argued more with my mom than my dad when it came to dating and how she was, kind of choosing who she spent her time with.
Mhm. Okay, cool, cool. So
Yeah.
as an adult, how has that journey been as far as the part um, that your dad played? Coming into your adulthood, and even now as an adult,
Mhm.
how important or impactful would I say is his presence in your life even now?
When I was when I was like a junior in high school, this is when students start looking ahead to colleges, right? If you're going to go on to college, trying to decide where you're going to apply. Do you meet all the different requirements, right, for whatever schools you're considering? And I remember talking to my parents, and I remember this of my dad in this conversation or conversations. it kind of distilled down to, Emma, you're smart. You can go wherever you want, and we'll support you. We'll support you because we want you to succeed. We want you to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. But he also was very practical in his guidance. He said that we want to help you as much as we can financially, but all three of your kids are going to want to go to college all at the same time for the most part, and you're going to have to help the family, right? And so in that discussion, scholarships came up because all three of us were smart. And so my dad was very, very practical. He was like the most practical person I've ever met as far as kind of context to the situation, whatever the problem is, not to get overly distracted by emotion in the way that you make decisions. But I remember him just kind of being really supportive. And then when I would ask questions as far as, Dad, where should I go? And he's like, Emma, it's your choice. And he said, you're going to succeed because you're smart and you work hard. And it's okay if you need help. You can always ask the family for help. We're going to always help you. And so for me, it was a little frustrating because I wanted him to tell me what to do, right? Yeah. I was asking, Dad, where should I go? Right? What should I do? And instead of answering for me, right, I was asking, permission almost as far as, can I do these things? And my dad was like, Emma, it's your decision. What do you want to do? We'll support you. We'll do as best as we can. You're going to need to help a little bit because, all three of you are going to want to, all three of us did want to go to college, but he recognized that, there's going to be some financial challenges with all three of us just being all in a row. But that was something that I thought was so interesting in hindsight, right? At the time, I was very frustrated with him. It was like, tell me what to do. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Tell me what to do. And he refused. He refused because he was enabling me to grow and to be confident in the decisions that I chose. And he always gave us that safety net. It's like, it's okay if you need help. We will always be here to support you. So the fear of making a mistake was reduced. It was frustrating, when you're 16, 17 years old and you're just used to adults telling you what to do. But for me, I really, really appreciated it later.
Right.
I appreciated it later, not at the time.
Right. So I want to get into a little bit more about just who your dad is, right? Because we before we started recording, of course, we always have a pre-conversation,
Sure.
and so in that conversation, you were really sharing of who the guy and the person that your father is and how he impacted your life. And we kind of started with a story, the cooking story. So why don't you tell us that story? And then again, just enlighten us on the man that your dad is and the part that he played in your life.
Okay. My dad was an immigrant from the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And he came over, I think it was in the late 60s. He immigrated to the US. He was on a work visa, and he was just looking to support the family a little bit back home. He's got a really big family, and he was the only one in the family who'd ever immigrated to the US. But part of what his part of the reason why he immigrated was also because when he was growing up, he wanted to be a mechanical engineer. And in the Philippines, you do what your elders tell you. You always respect your elders. And his uncle raised him, and his uncle was a shop owner. So he was a small business owner. His family was very, very big. And because he had so many siblings, the reason why his uncle raised him was because his uncle was childless. And so it was, he and his wife were childless, and he was wanting to have someone to raise, to maybe carry on the business. And so he, turned to his brother who had so many children. They lived out in the country. They lived out in the farm. But my dad, I guess he was around 10 years old. He started to live with his uncle. But his uncle, being a businessman, he wanted my dad to follow in his, footsteps, and run the business. But my dad wanted to be a mechanical engineer. But you do as your elders tell you. So when he told his uncle that he wanted to go to college to be an engineer, his uncle is like, no, I need you to get a business degree because you're going to run the business, right? So he went and got a business degree, even though that's not what he wanted to do. Part of him coming to America was to support the family, the many members of the family, with what he could earn, right, in the U.S. But he wanted to do what he wanted to do, right? And he ended up working for John Deere Harvester as a machinist. So he was able to do what he wanted. He wanted to work with machines, right? And so understanding the background of how my dad came over to the U.S., being an immigrant, right, being the only person in the family who'd ever immigrated, so he didn't have anybody to like ask, how does this work? Just the courage and the courage to overcome unknowns. He and my mom both were immigrants, and just the respect to your elders, but still pursuit of your dreams, right? Given the opportunity. And that's why people, that's why a lot of people come to the US, is for the opportunities, right? I grew up with the values of education, working hard, and support to the family. And my dad and my mom both instilled those values in us. And it was something that there was always strength in that. There's always strength in that, because you're overcoming things that you are uncertain of if you don't have experience or somebody to ask. But it was okay. It's like, that's okay. You can do whatever you want in America as long as you're smart, you work hard, and you have to be able to access opportunity, and you access more opportunities by being smart, by being educated. So they always had that. They always represented that for me. My dad, when I was growing up, he was like the strongest person I knew. That was the model in my mind, as far as just fearless and standing up, right, to prejudice. My dad was very dark skinned for being a Filipino, but he was adamant about standing up for himself when people would misunderstand him or prejudge him. He was always adamant about ensuring that we were safe and taken care of, that we were never cold, that we were never hungry, that, all these things to care for the family. I mean, he just represented strength to me growing up. And, but he also was a disciplinarian, right? There was strength and confidence, but there was also a little bit of fear, as far as don't piss him off, right? Don't get on his bad side, right? Because he's about doing things right. He's about being efficient and smart. And so I grew up that way. You don't want to be frivolous, right? Unless it is to celebrate, right? He was very frugal, very, very practical, but he also was open to ideas, and he wasn't completely risk averse. He was willing to take chances. He was willing to gamble, right? Yeah. And like that. And that, to me, growing up, it encouraged us to try things, even not knowing, right, what the outcome was going to be. It's like, how do you know? You got to try.
Right.
We'll be here to support you. So,
Yeah, and you mentioned when we're talking offline, one thing you mentioned about your dad was being the kind of person that didn't necessarily share his feelings, right, or share his
sure.
emotions on your sleeve. And so when you mentioned that, that reminded me of my dad, because my dad he's a little bit different now. So before growing up, my dad, same way, not really sharing his feelings too much. Didn't say I love you, you know what I mean? It was just kind of like, I love you, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so his motto to us was always respect me and love your mother. You know what I mean? And so
Ah,
that
okay.
was kind of his motto. But after my mom passed away, he changed a little bit, not a lot, but he changed a little bit. So he's a lot more affectionate than he was when she was here, because she played that role. She was
Right.
the affectionate one. But he's a lot more affectionate now. He says, "I love you" a little bit now. He don't say it as much. I have 8 siblings, so it's 9 of us all together.
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
and so every now and then he'll say it to one of us, and he'll say "I love you" to one of us, and we have a text thread with all of us in it, and we'll
Sure.
just text each other like, "Hey, Dad said I love you today." You know what I mean? Because it's not
Oh, he
something he
would say
says.
it. He would say it, but he wouldn't be the, kiss on the cheek, hugging and, holding hands and that sort of affection. In the Filipino culture, there's respect to elders is something that everybody has. And so it was customary for us in the family that before we would go to bed, we would ask for a blessing, and we always refer to it as asking for an amen, and we actually would offer our hand to our parent, whoever the elder is, right, and we would say in a question, amen, and then they would take our hand and put it, to their forehead as a blessing, meaning, I bless you, have a good night, I love you. And that represented I love you in our family every night. So we did that. It was customary. So when we would amen before we went to bed, that was dad telling us I love you. And he would say the words "I love you," but as far as just every day during the day,
Mhm.
he didn't he wasn't kind of touchy feely, warm fuzzy, that kind of affection. But we always knew he loved us. We he was very stoic because in his mind, the model, his role in the family was to take care of us, make sure that we were taken care of, that we didn't have any fears or concerns with money, that we weren't that we were well fed, that we were clothed and housed, and whatever it was that we wanted to achieve in our education, that he would do what he could to support us. So
Okay. All right. All right. So last question. Well, not last question, but I want to make a transition really quick, and transition to the next part of our podcast, where we talk about the uh, the book, the core four, which
mhm.
is the core four values that every daughter should receive from her father. And so I wrote this ebook because I felt like, for those who know my story, and I know the audience does, so I won't go all the way into all of it. But coming to the terms with the fact that I was connected to a lot of fatherless daughters, and becoming a fatherless daughter advocate, I began to look at my journey as a girl dad, my journey as a brother to 5 sisters, and watching my dad raise my 5 sisters, and then also my connection with fatherless daughters over the years of dating and friendship and things of that nature. And so I thought of what is the core at its core. What is the core values that a father brings to his daughter? And so I wrote the ebook, The Core Four, which is the four core values that every daughter should receive from her father. And audience, you guys can get your copy of the core four at ebooks by ejames.com. Again, that's ebooks by ejames.com. And so those four core values that I believe is very important that a father gives is guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection. And so, Emma, in your view of those four values, which one do you believe was probably one of the most important of those four that your dad instilled in you?
I would say it's affirmation of the four, because growing up in America, me, my brother, and my sister, we were born here, but we were raised by Filipino parents. So we grew up with a dual culture, right? With understanding our heritage, recognizing some of the language and the customs and the food. But our behaviors, the way that we thought, the way that we kind of showed up every day, were American kids, right? So we had the behaviors and the language and the customs of being American. We had both. We had both. And so what I understand as far as the affirmation is that um, confirmation of who you are, encouraging you to develop into your personal identity and celebrating, your potential and your value as a unique individual and that sort of thing. And I think that my dad did that for us because he recognized that we had a special, unique identity being firstborn generation in America, right? That was very unique. Nobody else in the family had that because we were the first ones,
Right.
and to recognize the opportunities that we had available to us by being American, that they really just encouraged us to pursue anything we wanted. He's like, you can do anything in America as long as you're smart, right? You have to be smart. You need to work hard. You need to open up opportunities, but you don't open up opportunities unless you have access, and you have more access when you're smart, right? And so it was a combination of head and heart that was emphasized in the way that we were raised. It's like you need to be smart, but you also need to have heart. You need to have support. You need to recognize that you can't do it by yourself, but we will always be here to support you. So the affirmation as far as recognizing us in who we were, and tying it back to these values of of education, of hard work, of pursuit of your potential, right? Education was a huge value growing up, but it was also recognizing that we're different and that's okay. Don't be prejudiced for people that you meet, because people will do that. My dad was really sensitive to prejudice because of being a very dark skinned Filipino, but he was also very smart, but he always has an accent, being an immigrant. Even now, he's going to be 84 next week. For as long as that he lived in the United States, over 40, 50 years, he never lost his accent, right? And some people will prejudge based on the way that you speak English. And so he was always very sensitive, and he taught us that prejudice is something that people who when they have prejudice, it's because they're ignorant. They don't understand something already, right? So they're missing something. They need to learn something. And then he explained the difference. Somebody who knows better and is still that way, they're not a good person. Somebody can be prejudiced and ignorant and just be naive and uninformed. But once they know better, they usually change their behavior. And
Right.
so that was something I grew up with, because he was so sensitive to um, prejudice being done to him. He's like,
Mhm.
that's not something you want to do. When you meet someone who's different than you and they do something unfamiliar, that's okay, because maybe that's normal for them. You need to find out more. You need to find out better and then decide. Don't
Mhm.
decide beforehand, because you don't know better. You might not know better.
Right.
And then he just kind of added that it's like, if people know better about you and still mistreat you, then that person's not a good person.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. All right. So last question, and I usually ask this to the dads. So it's going to be interesting to ask you. So I always say that the book is called The Core Four, which is the four core values. But if there could be a fifth value, that and this one I asked the fathers, I would say if there could be a fifth value that
Oh,
that
wow.
would be. But from a daughter's standpoint, if there was a fifth value from your point of view that you could say, well, I think you should add, this value. What would that value be and why?
Ah, well, I think with my dad, it was, it had to do with him being practical and frugal, but also being willing to take risk. It's being discerning
Hmm.
in your decisions,
Yes.
because whatever it is that is presented to you, you have to kind of assess it for what it's worth, for what it means, and then make a decision, right? And my dad always was very practical in the decisions that he would make. Sometimes there would be, emotional, triggers as far as a response or a decision, but he always kind of was practical about the decisions that he would make. And um, I think that would be it, being discerning.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. So, Emma, I want to say thank you, first of all, for being on the podcast. I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise and your story and the story of your dad. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with word of advice, word of inspiration, however you feel, um, to either the daughters who may be listening or maybe even to the fathers who may be listening, a word of advice or something like that, however you feel. And I also want you to leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature
Oh,
so that
sure. Okay.
we can follow you. So I'll give you a second to think about that. While you're thinking about it, to my listeners, I want to say thank you guys for tuning in once again to the Deal to Heal with E. James. Not the Deal to, I keep saying the Deal to Heal, to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys go and check us out. Check out my main website, my personal website, should I say, as a speaker and a podcaster and an author. Again, of course, my name is Ernest James, and my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And so you guys can go to dealhealfulfill.org in order to find out more about me and also to book me to come to be a speaker or a workshop presenter for your organization or your school. So make sure you guys go there. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. Make sure you check us out there. Also, make sure you guys go to ebooksbyejames.com where you can get your copy of the Core 4 as well as check out the other ebooks that we have available, including Forgiving Me, the 4 Steps to Self-Forgiveness, and From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring ebook for young men going into adulthood. Again, you can go to ebooksbyejames.com in order to see the ebooks that we have available there and check those out. Also, check out our inspirational t-shirt line, which is Deal to Heal Tees. That's Deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. So when you guys go there to check out our inspirational tees, you also can check out our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as a t-shirt for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with our logo on it also. So make sure you guys go to deal2healtees.com. That's deal, the number two, healtees.com to check that out. And last but not least, over the last few years, I've been able to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month talking about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, what it means to forgive, who forgiveness is for, just having an all around conversation to deal with forgiveness. The workshop is absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com in order to see when our next workshop is. So whenever you're listening to this, either one just passed or one is coming up. So go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next free virtual workshop on forgiveness, or you could just go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop held by the Forgiveness Mission in order to register that way. So again, that's the forgivenessmission.com. So again, Emma, let me say again, I definitely appreciate you so much for being on to share your story about you and your dad. So I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Okay. I haven't shared this to your audience in the show yet, but my first career was in the military. And I served for almost 18 years. I went to school on an ROTC scholarship. And I give credit in the courage to pursue that kind of opportunities because of my upbringing. I said it before that my dad represented strength to me, strength and protection and support for whatever I decided or chose to pursue. And, you know, being a woman in a male dominated industry like our military, I'm not a big person. I'm only 5'4", but I have done some challenging things in my life. I have surprised people because of my tenacity or my resilience or my confidence and my strength in pursuit of things that I have decided that I want to pursue. And I attribute a lot of it to my dad because of the values that I grew up with and just the strength and confidence to overcome things that are scary or things that you don't understand or know. And I think it's important to have that in your sphere of influence. For me, I was very, very fortunate that it was in my parents. And in my book, I actually, in my dedication, have my parents as the first folks that I recognize, mom and dad. My mom passed away in 2002, but my dad, you know, still is very strong. Like I said, turning 84 next year or next month. And I think that if you don't have it in your natural biological parent to provide that in your sphere of influence of support, that you have someone. So.
All right, all right. So leave us with your social media handles and where we can follow you guys.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I am on LinkedIn. My name is Emma Toops, so EMMA and TOOPS, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me there, but also you can connect with me via my website, my business website, and the name of our business is Toops Consulting. So it's my last name, TOOPS, consulting.com. And on the website, there is a tab that is my book site. So if you're interested in taking a look at some information for Wait What, That's the title of my book. The subtitle is The Success Formula for When Life Plays Out Differently Than You Expect. You can go to Amazon to get the book as well. So check it out.
All right. And we will make sure to have all that information in our descriptions. Make sure you guys go check out the descriptions under this podcast, because there's always a lot of great information in the descriptions. So we will have Emma's information and the link to the book. So you can just go right there and just go straight to the link in order to get your copy of Wait What, the book that Emma wrote. And we can't end it no better than that. So to my listeners, again, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, because we believe that the dad is I'm messing up my own ending. We believe that the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young lady's life. And so thank you guys once again for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else, that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.